At this time, we will have an update on Truist Park from our Finance Director, Bill Volkman, followed by an update on the battery from Mike Plant of the Braves.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to start with this slide for us today. First, I want to start, before we get into the numbers, and just congratulate the Braves on their World Series victory last year. So congratulations.
12 in a row.
This is just a photo from the World Series. You can kind of see the park and then the battery. So I'm going to go over some financial updates, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike to go over the 2021 highlights, the foundation, and what's coming in 2022. So, there we go. All right, so this is where everything kind of started. So I always like to start with this and kind of go forward from here. This was the original baseball when the investment was being contemplated. The local contribution of $300 million was capped. The Braves' contribution was listed at $372. Their contribution towards this investment was significantly more than that. So again, the county's contribution was capped, and the Braves continued to invest above and beyond the $372. All right, so this is really the financial story of this journey. So back in 2015, when the county issued the debt to fund the construction of the stadium, we released projections of how we plan on paying for that debt. At the very top, you'll see the annual debt service is projected at $22.5 million, and then you see 2018 through 2021, the debt service was right at that. And the important note that I want to call to everybody's attention, back in 2015, the county, as a part of those original projections, said that they would pay $6.4 million each year out of the county's general fund. And that is the second line under the funding breakdown. But I wanted to just make you aware that since 2018, we've contributed out of the general fund $5.3 million, $4.4 million, just over $5 million, and during the pandemic in 2020 and then 2021 to $4.8 million, almost $4.9 million. So that was the money out of the general fund that we contributed to fund the annual debt service. Every year since the beginning of this investment, we have been below that $6.4 million projection, including a pandemic. So that says a lot of the sustainability of this investment. You'll note the other revenue sources listed here. As we kind of break those down, we have hotel motel taxes, the Cumberland Special Service District 2 property tax, and the Cumberland Special Service District 1 $3 room night fee. These special service districts were created simply for this investment. This was the reason they were created and the major funding source to fund the annual debt service as we were to move forward. And then we have the county's rental car tax. So to round out, the total county contribution per the projections was $16.4 million. And obviously, we have to meet that every year. But how we do that, you see the other buckets have increased, and the general fund amount has been consistently below the $6.4 million. And at the very bottom of this slide, you'll see the amount of property taxes that this piece of property contributed in 2015, $50,000 to the county's general fund. In 2021, it was over $2 million. All right, so there's a lot of ways to look at this, and I know you can some people say you can make numbers say a lot of different things. The very top line is the $6.4 million of projections that we had in 2015. The red line in the middle is what the general fund paid out for each of those years. If you take away the amount of property tax the battery has paid in, that reduced to $2.7 million in 2021 during a pandemic, and 3.1 in 2020 during the height of the pandemic. So I just wanted to show you that there's a lot of ways you can look at this, but you can take a very conservative approach and say it's $4.9 million in 2021 or 2.7 after you take out the revenue generated specifically from the properties located at the battery. And just one other side note, the $2.7 million is 0.77% of the general fund's property taxes on an annual basis. So less than 1% of the county's overall general fund property tax revenue that we collect on an annual basis. Okay. And all of this couldn't happen without the the property values that have increased in and around the area. So we talk about that first year, the $50,000. The Battery property values in 2014 were $5 million and have grown to $626 million in 2021. And we expect those to continue to grow in 2022 as those final digest and assessments will be complete. The Battery property values increased by over $43 million from 2020 to 2021. The property taxes paid into the county since 2015 from just the Battery, because again, the stadium does not pay property taxes because it is owned by the authority, is $14.2 million since 2015. The Board of Education has collected $19.5 million since 2015 with $0 of investment into this property. The property taxes paid to the Cumberland the Cumberland CID during that time is $5.2 million. All right, and then we've talked about the investments, but I want to show you a history of the revenue collections related to the projections. So again, the far left column, you'll see the 2015 projections. This is everything with excluding of the general fund contribution. And I wanted to show you kind of what those looked like. 3 of these revenue sources, with the exception of the property taxes in the Cumberland Special Service District 2, hit all-time highs in 2019 pre-pandemic. And you can see what the pandemic did to some of these revenue sources in 2020 and 2021. Specifically, the $3 room night fell from a high of almost $3.8 million to a low of $2.5 in 2020. I can say in 2022, these have rebounded nicely, and we're seeing significant improvements in both the $3 room night and the hotel motel taxes. But again, going down to the hotel motel tax line, that hit a high of over $3 million in 2019 and fell to a low of $419,000 in 2020. So you can see what the pandemic had as an impact on these revenue sources, and the county was still able to maintain an investment from the general fund below the $6.4 million as we were to move forward. These are revenue sources, with the exception of the hotel motel tax under the Omni and Aloft. These are revenue sources that were not a part of the 2015 projections. These are additional revenues that are flowing through to the county, the Board of Education, and the state. Just want to call your attention to 2020 when the Braves were not able to have fans in the stands for games. Look at that first column under sales tax. You'll see it's $3.3 million. That fell from $16.4 million in 2019. Just take a look at what that did in 2021. Fans have returned. That is an all-time high of almost $22.8 million. That is split, obviously, between the county, the Board of Education, and the state based on the sales tax that's allowed. But for 2020, these additional revenue sources generated almost $5.6 million for the county. Again, a lot of these cannot be used to support the debt service, but they do feed our SPLOST projects and help cover the cost of increasing cost for all of the county SPLOST projects, as well as the Board of Education SPLOST projects of $3.7 million. In addition to that, again, the state receives a large share of that of almost $15.5 million. And just over this 4-year period, these few revenue sources generated $64.9 million between the county, the Board of Education, and the state. Yes, ma'am.
Does the $22,781,380 2021 collections, does that include the World Series games and everything?
So that's a great question. So all of the numbers with the exception of the sales tax, so all the numbers with the exception of this one number are shown on our fiscal year basis. This one number, because of the way we have to collect the sales tax data, is on a calendar year basis. So yes, that does include the World Series, and Mike, keep me honest, that does include the World Series timeframe because it's on a calendar year basis. All of the other numbers that you see here, hotel, motel, and otherwise, end September 30. So there is a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome. That's a great question. Okay. And just jumping to this last slide here, I just want to show you a little bit of the breakdown. We've gone over all of these revenue sources individually, but these are additional revenues that have come into the county, the Board of Education, the CID, and the state for one fiscal year is over $34.6 million, and that does not include the $6.1 million of annual contributions that the Braves make to the county to help fund the debt service. That is extremely impressive as we kind of walk through these. As we go through the numbers, again, just keep in mind, the original projection was $6.4 million out of the general fund. And most of these are not even contemplated as part of those original projections. Is there any questions on the financial side before I turn it over to Mike to discuss 2021 foundation and then 2022? Commissioner.
Of course, thank you for the presentation on this. There has certainly been a lot of discussion kind of out in the ether of the expense to our taxpayers. Just curious, because I think the tagline that's been floated around is it's costing us $15 million or $16 million from taxpayers, and I'm assuming they're saying it's a net. I know that there are some questions around the analysis, but I was just curious, from your perspective, looking at the numbers, what is the impact to taxpayers as a bottom line?
That is a great question. So I've seen that number too, and we've reviewed the data on that as well. This is what we would stand by as far as our impact. And then I would say you take this number, and even if you want to take the most conservative of this number, you look at the 4.9 in 2021, okay? And then with that, you can add in the stadium capital contribution of just over $1.2 million. That would be about our limit. We wouldn't go above and beyond that based on 2021 numbers. I know where the 15 has been discussed is that a lot of the reference is coming into the additional service districts that were created. But again, those were created specifically for this project. And of those service districts, the property tax component is paid by commercial properties.
That was going to be my follow-up question. These are tax districts that they're not the burden of all of our taxpayers in the county. That's correct. Specific locale.
Very specific locale in and around the stadium, very similar to the boundaries of the Cumberland CID. Not quite the same, but very similar. And again, commercial properties are the ones that are paying this. So that's when we talked about, if you look at the $2.7 million, that's my view is the net investment of the county is really coming out of pocket for. And again, that is 0.77% of the county's general fund taxes. So imagine that 2.7 is now split amongst every property taxpayer in the county. That is a very, very, very small number.
Thank you for the clarification on that too.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. And Mike, I'm going to click. Any other questions? I'm sorry, Commissioner. Sorry.
Okay, Bill, I know you and I've had some robust conversations on the $3 a night hotel motel.
Yes.
And where I am struggling is with the collection history.
Yes.
You know, you are showing that in 2021, we collected $2.85 million. However, that $2.85 million didn't actually come to the county because 50% of that goes to Cab Traveler and Tourism. But you're not showing the funding that goes to other sources. Yet if you go back to your
this one right here.
The funding and annual debt service, yeah.
Yes.
You show that, you know, the county had $1.8 million. So there's $400,000 missing here.
That's correct.
And so, again, while we see things floating around, this is also where our constituents are not understanding how we're getting to these numbers, because if you, again, this doesn't make sense to me, and we're not showing how these funds are truly spent throughout other areas as well.
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm going to flip to this slide and show exactly what you're talking about. So the $3 room night for 2021, we collected just over $2.8 million. This is a great question. So as contemplated in 2015, these funds would go to service the stadium debt. The board had made changes to how that they would use these funds since 2015. So I did want to show, based on projections, what we actually collected. But to your point, this is exactly what we want to have this slide for. This is showing how we paid for it. And you'll notice in 2021, we collected $2.8 million roughly for the $3 room night. And to your point, we did not use that. We used just over $1 million of that to fund the stadium debt, because the board had made decisions to use those dollars in other ways, Cobb Travel and Tourism being a component of that. PD overtime being a component of that. And we've made some other decisions to use it for circulator or other things like that. So as we change how we use that, I didn't want to take away from the projections of the revenue that they were originally created for, but I did want to show you the use of those. So that is a good point. And to your point, we talk about the 2.7. Obviously, it's a policy decision, but that is one of the things that does impact that. As we take away from these revenue sources and use them for other things, that would have an impact or slow that number. We understand that especially Cobb Travel and Tourism helps feed the area, so it is a supporting role of this. But again, it's a policy decision of how we want to use those funds, so I wanted to make sure to show you both scenarios, revenue collected versus projections, and how we use those. But yes, to your point, there are other sources or other uses of the $3 room night funds that the county does use those, not solely for debt service. And that is a very good point.
Okay, and I guess that's where I still struggle with the budget and everything
Sure.
else
Yeah.
as our conversations is because, again, we're handed these reports. It shows, we're collecting $2.8 million, but that $2.8 million isn't truly going to cover this debt like it's being portrayed.
So, and that's why it's very important to have the funding and use slide. That's going to show how we're taking care of this. Because, and also, in honesty, one of the things that we talk about is the $3 room night was, we originally, projected a use of just over $2.7 million to go towards this. The actual collections that they brought in for the first couple of years were around $3.6 million. So there was contemplation using that for circulator. So there is a little bit of give and take on how we handle that. But again, the circulator services the battery and the surrounding areas to help support that area. So there is, you're right, there is some conversations, and there's also a little bit of a lag. So when we look at the property tax revenues collected for the CSSD2, that, just because of the timing in which we collect those, whatever we collect can be used on whatever we collect this year can be used for next year because we have to have the cash in hand to do so. So there always is going to be a little bit of lag between time of collections and time of cash out the door.
Okay, I just, I guess I'm hoping that from this conversation that the board can also then look at the policy because it is technically expired for 2023, according to, because it says here, if renewed. Because again, you're showing that we collected 2.8. Your
Yep.
slide is showing we used 1.8 million, but if they did the 50%, that's 1.4. The math isn't adding up here. In 2023, the current contract goes to paying over 67% of this fund to Cobb Travel and Tourism, which means, again, the general fund or some other source of revenue is going to have to fill in what's not going here, which is what's being proposed here.
Sure.
But then in 2024, it goes to 75%.
Yes.
So again, while I understand and I know the Braves are doing great, this is misleading.
And that is one of the big things that we look at as we walk through this, is you can see in the year which we changed that. I believe this is if I'm not mistaken, in 2020 or 2019 was the first year we made that switch. And you can see the downward slide that we had through 2019, and that kind of popped back up a little bit. A lot of that is very much pandemic, but also the way we choose to use those funds. When under the previous chair, one of the focuses was using some of that money to pay for PD overtime and then also continue with the circulator. So there has always been a little bit of a transition in how the board wishes to use those funds. And as you said, the amount for Cobb Travel and Tourism does increase to 67.5% for 2023. And then I believe 75% in 2024. So that does impact, but I think at the time the board felt that was the policy decision of the board to make that funding decision. Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
And I think what we're kind of getting at is that total row with that 16.484, how we get there, or 16.384,
Yep.
how we get there is really, making sure that we are transparent with those call outs so that it can be obvious, okay, this one is going here, and it's not just that bucket, but like what part of that bucket, and then kind of how that bucket splits out, and maybe that might help.
Yes.
Well, Well, and while I understand that, but we also have to look that, we're going to be implementing this Evergreen study. We've got another step coming, and that impacts the overtime, which again comes from this, which if this $3 per night hotel motel is supposed to be going to, we'll never cover that at the increased rate that we're going through our overtime either, which then goes back and impacts the general fund.
And Commissioner, that's one of the things that I wanted to stick to the original projections, because yes, we do know that there is, additional cost beyond that. So when we talk about the 2.7, that is for the annual debt service only. We do know that there is PD overtime, there's a circulator, there's a stadium capital maintenance. But again, all those added into are still significantly below what we originally projected is, and especially the number that you hear is 15 million. That is we are nowhere close to that, and especially once you start to take out the Braves investment on the property tax piece, that number even significantly further reduces. So I think that's why you definitely need both slides, because it is very important to see how it is paid, which is what this slide is, and then also to follow up with what did we project? Because again, the projections were in 2015, and policy decisions have been made since then to change how those funds are used. So I do think it's very important to show both sides of that coin, to say, hey, we projected it was going to be this, and it has exceeded expectations. How we choose to use those funds is obviously a board decision, but I want to show you both that as well. Sorry.
Right, and Bill, I appreciate the slides, and I just want to make it clear. I want to make it clear that it was the board's decision to reallocate the funds. I don't want the walkaway to be that there was some type of nefarious acts or anything going on with the funding, but it was the board's decision, the board's policy to utilize the funds for the circular, PD overtime, et cetera.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner. Sorry.
I was going to say, it seems like, though, even with this is kind of like the discussion, our policy discussion for how to get to that 16 and making sure that that's something that makes sense for our budget. But the silver lining is we're still operating underneath the threshold of what was originally projected. I'm not talking about the total, but the 6.4 committed out of general fund. So it's still totaled up a little. It's still totaled up less than that.
Yes, Commissioner. I mean, that's the key takeaway, I think, with anything as we talk about the uses, that, we have to pay. At the end of the day, between the county and the Braves, we paid $22.5 million. Our portion is just under 16.4. The board can make any policy decision to decide how you want to get to that number, but at the end of the day, we pay out 16.4. And the reason we were able to make those policy decisions is because of the growth in the other areas that you see here. The property tax related to the Cumberland Special Service District 2 is one that you see continue to grow. And because of that growth, one, we were able to hold the general fund contribution under $6.4 million during a pandemic, while still reducing the amount that we contribute from CSSD 1, the $3 room night. So without the additional growth in the other areas, you wouldn't have been able to make that policy decision without negatively impacting the general fund. And I think that is really your key takeaway here, is the general fund's impact. How you want to do the other sources and how you want to make policy decisions around that is absolutely the board's decision. And that is always our counsel when we have those policy decisions. Can we sustain that without negatively impacting the general fund? And I think we've shown, even through a pandemic, yes, you were able to do that. You were able to contribute additional dollars to COP Travel and Tourism. Yes, you were able to contribute to the circulator, PD overtime, without negatively impacting the general fund. So I view this very much as especially during a pandemic, a win. Despite a pandemic, I would say it's still it's a very big win. So that's kind of our walk away. But again, it is a policy decision on how the board wishes to use those individual funding sources. Commissioner.
Thank you. Is there any way you could give us a breakdown for the special service districts?
Absolutely.
And what's allowed? I know when we revised that to, it's partial PD. It's not, it doesn't cover the full amount. Some of it is still coming out of the general fund. So if we could see a breakdown for this, especially the two service districts,
Absolutely.
and how that money is distributed.
So I can tell you, we use 100%, absolutely, to answer your question, we will provide you that breakdown, and we'll give you a history of that breakdown. So it's not a one-year snapshot, it's a year over year, so you can see how that changes.
Thank you.
The property tax component of CSSD 2, that is 100% used to fund the stadium debt. There is a 1 year lag. So when you notice the collections versus uses, it is a little bit of a lag as we walk through that. But yes, we will be happy to provide that to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions before we hear from Mr. Plant? You have any?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bill, very thorough,
Thank you.
and I appreciate the follow-up.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay,
Mr. Plant?
thank you. Commissioners, good morning. Are you going to work this clicker for me,
Yeah, I
Bill?
got you.
Okay.
Sorry. You want a foundation?
Yeah. So on behalf of the whole Braves organization, we're pleased to be able to address the board this morning and give you a few updates. In addition to what Bill just said, we're proud of the financial impact that we've made over the last couple of years, and obviously are confident that those numbers will continue to grow as we build out more of the battery and have more and more positive impact announcements. You know, one of the things that we also pride ourselves on through the Atlanta Braves Foundation is giving back to the community where we live and work. And the slide you'll see here, I'm not going to read every one of these bullet points. I'll point out a few key highlights in 2021 of how we did impact Cobb County and the community at large. For example, we partnered with the Cobb Community Foundation through the pandemic, provided them $50,000 in 21. We provided some additional money to them in 2020, but more importantly, Truist Park became a holding ground for millions of meals that were distributed to Cobb citizens in need. And as you see some of the numbers there, 4.2 million pounds of food flowed through Truist Park, and that equated to about 3.8 million meals that were distributed beyond Cobb. We're also very active in the military and the veterans organizations here in Cobb County. The memorial fund has been generated to pay tribute and honor to all of the Cobb veterans. We provided a $50,000 grant to that memorial services pursuit of funds. We also are very proud to announce that we're the home base for the Warrior Alliance. For 5 years, we've provided an office for them. We actually moved out of our Braves Development Company offices for the Warrior Alliance. They provide tons of veteran services for veterans that are coming home and obviously need a chance to start integrating themselves into society and support for their families and a lot of different services. So that was kicked off last July, and they'll be there at least 5 years. Obviously, first responders, Cobb police and firefighters do an incredible job, not only for us, but the entire community. So we have a number of programs that are recognizing their support of all of us for police officers and firefighters. Growing the game is important to us. We provided $200,000 to refurbish and renovate the Anderson Boys and Girls Club baseball fields last year, and we'll continue to look at those opportunities throughout Cobb in years to come. Schools and education, we do a lot with Cobb County schools and the teachers, kids, youth programs, providing teachers with various opportunities and giving back to them in a number of different projects, as you see here, how we support teachers and the good work that they're obviously doing in the school system. And then one of the last things we did is we have this most valuable teacher program where we invested $50,000 to support teachers across Cobb County. There's a number of other programs you'll see listed there. I can assure you that as recently as yesterday, our Braves Foundation, we're looking at other additional programs to support the schools in Cobb County and also to grow the game in Cobb County. And it's, as I said earlier, one of the things we're really proud of is giving back to this great community. Couple highlights from 2021. I'll start at the bottom, one that we don't forget and take too lightly, but certainly winning the World Series was an incredible impact for our organization, our fans, the 9 million visitors that came to the Battery last year to attend games and concerts and obviously everything else that we have to offer there from all over the world. So I don't want to get too far over our skis, but yes, we have a 12-game winning streak, and keep your fingers crossed that we can keep that going tonight. But we feel good about our team and where we're at in the season so far. We hosted 406 events last year at the Battery, and our vision was always built on creating a 365-day-a-year environment and bringing people there with their families, their friends, and to enjoy it, to live there, to work there. There's 5,500 employees now working on site on that 57-acre campus. I remember walking through there 8 years ago and it was woods. And so we really have brought that area of Cobb to life, and obviously Bill's fiscal impact study. I mean, we're proud of the fact that there's $34 million that were generated in that campus just last year. We opened a couple different major tenants last year, TK Tower, the elevator test tower. We appreciate the county working with on obviously that huge endeavor. All in, that's about 600,000 square feet of space, both the 300,000 square foot office, the conference center, then the elevator test tower. There's about 600 TK employees that have come from all over North America. Papa John's moved their headquarters there from Louisville. They now occupy 3 floors of that building. And one of the great things about TK is when they're now up fully operational, they'll bring 10,000 visitors a year from all over North and South America to test those elevators, train on and all their technicians at that site. So again, just continues to build on the economic impact that we're able to create. And then, of course, we opened a bunch of new restaurants, and last year, I feel really good about obviously what we were able to do through the pandemic. Again, appreciate Cobb and the state of Georgia. We never closed. We pivoted. We got really creative. We lost one tenant through the pandemic, and so it's a testament to just working with people and making sure that, as we said early on, we didn't want to hear the keys jingling at the end of the year. And that was a successful objective that we were able to achieve. So coming in 2022, the year we're in right now, we're halfway through it, obviously, but you saw the announcement probably 6 weeks ago that we are building another 250,000 square foot office headquarters for Truist Securities. That's their North American operation for all their investment banking. Eventually, that will house over 1,000 employees. And that will start going vertical in December of this year. We also have a number of new tenants that we've announced, Cultivate Coffee and Yoga 6 if you're into exercise, Battle and Brew, and we have another 3 tenants that we'll be announcing very shortly. And that will essentially fill up the space. We will have no more leasing space available at the Battery, and it continues to add to our lineup. And then, again, not getting over our skis, but I can speak for everyone at the Braves, and I'm sure everyone here, we would love to repeat as world champions and have another great parade here in Cobb and create more of an impact for the future. I'd like to pivot here a little bit and just ask for your indulgence. One of the things that we've done recently is, I mean, there's obviously, you had questions about some of the financial funding of debt service and that, so we took it upon ourselves to, after 5 years now, to really, we wanted to understand the impact. And we have data and lots of information now to understand where fans come from all over the world. And 9 million people, license plate readers, and zip codes from everyone that buys tickets. So we have that data. And it was important for us to really, as I said, understand that impact. So when we started this project 9 years ago, our aim was to not just create a new home for the Braves and a one-of-a-kind experience for fans and patrons. It was to build a partnership with Cobb County and to serve as a resource. We envisioned a destination that attracted people from across greater Atlanta 365 days a year, one that created life-changing job and career opportunities and helped to drive the economy into the future. Standing here today, I'm proud to say that we believe that vision has become a reality. Mr. Volkman reported a snapshot of the Battery's Atlanta's substantial economic impact. The tax revenue generated here funds vital services for Cobb residents far and beyond the Battery. It helps our schools hire more teachers and purchase supplies. It serves as a cultural and philanthropic hub that has made a true impact. Today, we're releasing another study by renowned baseball economist Andrew Zimbalist, which further drives home the vital role the Battery plays now and in the future of Cobb County. Zimbalist's model examined expected revenues, extensive amounts of factual data, new investments, Cobb County expenses such as debt service and inflation, and he concludes that Truist Park and the Battery are a significant fiscal plus for the community. Truist Park was a, quote, attractive investment for Cobb County taxpayers. He also shows that the economic activity from the Battery alone has boosted the entire local business ecosystem. The Braves are grateful for the incredible support you've had from Cobb County, and we do not take it for granted. We will always be committed to being transparent. Ideas and ways to collaborate with the county, the schools, nonprofits, and other organizations are at the forefront of our priority. We want Cobb residents to know that the Battery is a resource that is contributing in a positive way to this community. So we're proud of being a part of this community. We think the best is yet to come, and certainly this report will focus only on what we generate at Truist Park in the Battery. We believe there's a massive halo effect that we've created. Again, the information's there, the numbers don't lie, with all the thousands of additional residents that have been created, 5 Class A office buildings, and the list goes on and on around us. So I'm proud to just be able to leave with you today, and we'll be releasing this very soon. Later, copy of this report and fiscal impact from Andrew Zimbalist. He's a world-renowned sports economist, and I think you'll find it enlightening. It might take you back to school a little bit because he's a Harvard professor that has done this for a living, but again, I think you'll find that this tells us a great story, that this has been a win-win for both organizations and the county. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Any questions?
Also, could we have copies of all the slides that were presented today from County Finance and the Braves? And is that a press release that is going out today, the report?
It is.
Okay. And will it be online that we can find it, or can you
It'll
email
be
it to
online.
us as
Yes.
well?
Yes,
Okay.
but I
Is
brought
it-
hard copies for you.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Do any of the board members have questions for Mr. Plant or Bill Boltman? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do just want to say, it was a massive project for the entire community. Lots of different things throughout that period. And certainly anyone that's been here for, extended, in the county for an extended period of time can note on the positive impact of the development itself. But I do appreciate the specific oversight and delicacy that we treat this development with, both from the county side, because it is a major investment, and so everyone is are going to be critical when it's, need to really dig into the numbers to see what's actually going on, make sure that those expenses are being attributed to the right place. And so I really do appreciate the partnership in making sure that we can create that amount of transparency, the questions that come out of this board as well, and, not being afraid to really dig into the numbers. So thank you for that.
You bet.
Thank you, Mike, for your presentation and the update. With respect to the report, can the general public access it on the Braves site? Is that where they can find the report?
I'm going to look to my colleague back here. Yes.
It will be on the Braves
Yes.
website? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for your partnership with the county, and good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And go Braves.